bullish or bearish. I don't know.
Was that before the hack or after the hack?
I don't know. I can't remember.
So what happened was there was this one group that created this thing they call the DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization. The idea is that there's this whole smart contract, complicated smart contract that governs the money that people send to the DAO, and then the smart contract would, based on people voting with however much money they send in, they can vote on what project the smart contract will invest in. So it's kind of like a fund where it would just grow based off of investment. So a lot of people send money in. I think it was like $150 million, something like that. It's not that much in today's picture, but I think it was like 30% of all ETH in existence was sent to the DAO. And then someone found a bug in the code where they just basically stole all the money for themselves. And then the community came together, and then Vitalik and others made a decision to roll back or it's not really a rollback. They made the decision to lock the funds from the hackers' address, and then redistribute it to people who invest in it. So it's basically like a state change, right? They made a hard fork of a state change that moved money. And when that happened, that's when the Ethereum Classic fork came about. The Ethereum Classic was the chain that didn't have the rollback, right, so to speak. So that's when the Ethereum forked away from Ethereum Classic. And so, yeah, that's what happened.
That's a pretty. Did the hacker ever sell their Ethereum Classic?
I actually don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm going to investigate that.
Did they sell the ETH? All right, no, the ETH was locked. They kept the Ethereum Classic. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that. I was like borderline Bitcoin maxi back in those days. At least like one of the fake Bitcoin maxis where they just like trade alts to stack Bitcoin. And I remember that happening and being like, I'm going to join the Ethereum Classic side. This is like, I believe in Ethereum Classic more than Ethereum now. And I quickly got over it, and I'm glad I did, because I might be down there with Barry.
Well, you'll be happy today, because Ethereum Classic had a huge pump the past couple of days.
Yeah, you just would have been pissed off for 4 years.
More like 6 years. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of in the same camp. I thought Ethereum, the team was making a bad decision to do that, because I think nothing would have been just fine if they just let it be. Ethereum won't die because of the hack. It's kind of like when Mt. Gox went down, or when the Silk Road went down. Bitcoin didn't die because of it. So Ethereum wasn't going to die because of this one little hack. But they set a precedence that they basically had control, right? They can do whatever they want, which is a bad sign for me, right? So that's what people are kind of complaining about today, which is Ethereum Foundation and Vitalik pretty much have control over the network. They can do, it might not be 100% true, but they still have a ton of influence over it.
I think this gets into a pretty interesting conversation around like people versus code. I've seen this happen in the web space where a project was forked, and there might be an idealistic reason why you should go with the code, like the code version that you believe in, right? In this case, maybe the idealism of Ethereum Classic, but the people, the people followed the leader, right? Like what Vitalik said. So the belief was much more in Vitalik and the people involved than like whatever their ethics may be with the code. And to me, go ahead.
It's a little bit different than Bitcoin, right? So
that's what I was leading into. It's like the role, like it really hints at how important it was that Satoshi stepped aside.
Yeah. So with Ethereum, the value of the currency of the network, most of it came from the team, right? The Ethereum Foundation team and Vitalik, right? So Ethereum Classic didn't have that support, so it became a kind of a cheaper version, a fork of Ethereum, and it's much less supported, right? And the value is much less because of that. Even though I think the ideology behind it is much stronger than to be able to just fork and return funds from a hack, right? That's what central banks do, right? That's what having some people in control of saying whose money this belongs to, right? Which is not, I don't think that's good for cryptocurrency, but that's not the point. The point is that Ethereum with Vitalik and the Ethereum Foundation actually has more value. And that's something that, like you, Cobie, I didn't understand initially. And I really supported Ethereum Classic, but then now I can see I can see the reason why Ethereum has a lot more value than Ethereum Classic. And with Bitcoin, you see the previous dev team losing power because they want to do something that the community did not support, which is to hard fork to 2 megabytes or doing a megabyte hard fork or whatever it is, right? And that's something that's special with Bitcoin, which is the ideology behind Bitcoin is a lot stronger. So if you want to change the $21 million Bitcoin limit, that's not going to happen with Bitcoin. But with Ethereum, the foundation decides to cut the mining rewards in half, and it just happens. Whatever it is, just happens.
I think that is true. I think if you are looking for the most, censorship-resistant, trustless money that can reclaim your sovereignty and separate money from state or whatever bad actor, Bitcoin is by far your best bet. Has been your best bet since since any other coin was created. Bitcoin has remained superior in that regard. It's not necessarily an investment thesis. Like, of course, when Ethereum cuts the mining rewards by half, the supply and demand equation is very simple to figure out what happens to the price from something like that. But I agree from like a philosophical point of view, like Bitcoin does remain the superior asset, and I think that's why Bitcoin always performs better on the downside than everything else, because you don't have to think about it so much. You can just leave your money there. It's going to be the same thing in a few years. So I do think that makes sense. While we're talking about changes to chains, how do you feel about the Rubin proposed OPCTV change? The dev community seems a bit skeptical about it. Is it going to be a Litecoin thing too?
Possibly. I think it's a pretty interesting proposal. I think we're definitely willing to experiment with it. I do think like Bitcoin, the community is kind of focused on Taproot first. Once that is out, I think they'll be more open to doing something else. Do more stuff in addition to that, right? So that's why it's kind of getting a lot of pushback initially, not because it's a bad proposal. I think it's just because they didn't want to get they want focus to be on Taproot, getting that out first before doing something else.
And is like, how does because a lot of the time way back in the day, I saw Litecoin as the chain that can do experimental stuff, sort of like the testnet for Bitcoin. Do experimental stuff, do things that are a bit weird, make some changes that maybe the Bitcoin community was against, and they get to like see how it plays out in production. Do you still see Litecoin fulfilling that role? So is this something that you could like accelerate on and do quicker than Bitcoin and say, look, it seems to be good? Or is it have you seen Litecoin's like sort of place in the ecosystem change over time?
I think it always has that role. It can step up when it needs to. So for example, with like SegWit 4 years ago, it activated on Litecoin first, and it was able to prove that there's no issue with it, right? Before SegWit activated on Litecoin, there was all this FUD out there about anyone can spend, about stuff that miners can easily attack it. It's a very dangerous upgrade for Bitcoin. And once it activated on Litecoin, and there's like millions of dollars worth of Litecoin in the SegWit addresses, and no one was able to steal from it, all that FUD just kind of blew away, like disappeared, because you can't really FUD anymore when there's something active, an active network that with a decent size, right? So you can't really test this stuff on testnet. Like you can test that to make sure that transactions work. You can create the SegWit transactions you spend from SegWit addresses and stuff like that, but you can't really test the game theory aspect of Bitcoin on testnet because there's no money involved, right? And there needs to be money involved to have incentives for someone to attack the network and to hurt it, right? And Litecoin was able to prove that it actually functioned properly without any issues.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I always liked Litecoin because of that. And also, when I was at university, I told all of my friends to buy Bitcoin. They had a massive unit bias thing. They were like, "Bitcoin's too expensive. It's 400. Look at Litecoin. It's 1." Way back then, I learned every lesson I needed to know about retail trading.
Now Litecoin is 300 and Dogecoin is less than 1. So
yeah. And how do you feel about the Bitcoin Cash recent EVM sidechain stuff? So I read about it not long ago. Suzu sent me a Telegram DM and was like, "Have you seen this?"
Also a flex.
And yeah, I was like, "I don't like it." Like I said, I sent it to 2 developers that I know who are like godlike, and I was like, "Is this good? I need to sound smart in front of Sue." So they were like, here's exactly what I would say. I merged their comments together and pasted them back to him. That's but they seem to be launching an EVM sidechain called Smart BCH. I have looked into it like a little bit over the last week since I found out about it. How do you feel about it? Like, do you think this is going to be something like more chains going to be launching EVM sidechains, or it's just nonsense for a pump?
To be honest, I haven't been following Bitcoin Cash much at all, so
I don't think anyone has.
I'm not familiar with. I think I've heard the term Smart BCH once. I don't know anything about it.
It probably wasn't describing investors of BCH.
Well, it's an oxymoron, so I didn't really pay too much attention to that. From what you said, I assume it's a sidechain that has Ethereum virtual machine, so you can run Ethereum smart contracts on it. I'm not sure what the point of doing that is, because just use Ethereum, right? Or
you heard it here.
I think it's this this sort of trend that started by the Binance Smart Chain, or maybe started by Tron, where if you have a EVM chain that uses your collateral from somewhere else, so uses BCH as collateral, then you can play like Ponzi games with BCH as collateral, which raises demand for BCH over time or something.
Well, there was even this idea on Bitcoin. I can't remember the name of the project, but somebody was raising money to try to bring like compute and smart contract stuff to Bitcoin in some capacity.
There's RSK, right?
Yeah, that was it.
Stock on Bitcoin, which is similar. I'm not sure how much traction that's gaining.
I don't think very much.
Yeah, so this is like Smart BCH is no different, but it's kind of similar thing, but on a much smaller network. Right? So
why do you think there hasn't been too much traction for like DeFi on Bitcoin?
Same thing, right? Why don't you just use Ethereum?
Well, because of the decentralization and fair launch type of stuff you just talked about, wouldn't it be idealistically better on Bitcoin?
But you don't really need that for something that's not money, right? So I've always said that Ethereum's biggest competitor is someone like Amazon or Google coming in with their centralized solution that does smart contracts.
But then why do you need a blockchain at all?
For money, right? You want money to be censorship.
No, not for money. Like,
you don't. Right?
Okay.
You don't necessarily need it. You need it for certain stuff applications. Like if you really need censorship resistant, so if you're like a gambling application or something that will get censored, you want something to protect that, right? You want a blockchain to protect that. But for like CryptoKitties or whatever, you're just trading like NFTs, it doesn't really matter that much if it's on the Amazon.
So is there a difference in your mind between censorship resistance and how to achieve that and decentralization? Aren't they kind of hand in hand?
Yeah, you need decentralization for censorship resistance.
Okay, so if you're going for censorship resistance, and that might be bringing compute or gambling, whatever, to a network like Ethereum, you don't think that accomplishes decentralization? Like you really don't think like Ethereum is decentralized today?
I do think it's decentralized. I think there is censorship resistance, but with that comes a price, right? That's why Ethereum fees are so high. It costs more to have something that's decentralized because it's replicating the same thing over thousands of nodes, right? So,
but the layer 2 concepts should fix some of that, and theoretically achieve decentralization in a similar way to what Lightning is trying to do with Bitcoin for payments. Correct?
Correct. Should.
Yeah. But what are your thoughts on that? Like from a scalability, and can they accomplish this? What the trilemma or whatever?
To be honest, I'm not paying full attention to what they're doing. I think definitely the work is being done to add to make it more scalable with second layer, similar to Lightning on Bitcoin. Yeah.
But do you think that's being accomplished on the layer 2 side for Bitcoin, like Ethereum aside?
Yes, I do. It's just slow, right? So people are working hard on Lightning. I think it's still, a lot of it is UX, right? Just to make it easy for people to use it. There's also a trade-off, right? There's the trade-off of ease of use versus security, and also the cost, right? How much does it cost to get onto the second layer, and how easy it is to use it.
Yeah, I do think the user experience is like extremely tragic right now.
I'm pretty much in blockchain, yeah.
What's that?
I don't know, because like I used to think that, but then someone created MetaMask, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, this sort of feels like something you could use. You go to a site and you just click connect and you're good. But a bunch of the Lightning Network stuff is like really, really subpar. Like this,
it's really
like
complicated
early internet
to describe, like channel liquidity and being on both sides of it, and like it's actually difficult to actually get on Lightning and then be able to do anything. There's a little bit of a catch-22 with the liquidity that's required in the channels. I still don't really get it personally.
Yeah, I think that if that improves, there can be a lot more traction there. But I think it is a huge blocker. So I've seen in chat a lot of spam about something I don't know what it is, and so I might be getting trolled. So if this is something offensive, I apologize in advance. But Kushti Crypto and then someone else, I'm not going to scroll up because it moves too fast. Does Charlie have anything to say about the Velvet fork on Litecoin?
Yeah, so what they're talking about is something to do with Cardano, where Litecoin.
Oh God, I did get trolled. No, end the stream.
It's a way where it's a proposal where you can move Litecoin onto the Cardano network to use Cardano's smart contracts.
Exactly what everyone's aiming to do.
Yeah, it's something like we're looking into, but in the end, it's something that's decided by the community or by the miners whether or not they want to fork Litecoin, like a soft fork of Litecoin, to add this ability to move Litecoin onto the Cardano network.
I can't believe I got trolled by Kushti Crypto to bring up Cardano. All right, can we ban Kushti Crypto from it? He can no longer
just
watch
time him out. Time out for like half an hour.
How have you been following much of this like Ethereum killers like war between like Solana and BCSC and BSC, oh my god, and Cardano and Polkadot and Avalanche and blah blah blah?
I haven't been following that much. I do know that I do know a little bit about BSC. I think BSC definitely has a shot because it's more of I always thought that a more centralized solution for smart contract makes more sense. So it wasn't Google or Amazon, but it's now Binance, which is also a big player in this space. And they're coming out, they have a smart contract or EVM compatible solution where they kind of have more control and the fees are lower because of that. It's more centralized, but nothing wrong with that for a smart contract platform to have something that's more centralized.
But to the question earlier, can they achieve censorship resistance in that more centralized ecosystem?
No, like they can censor it, right? Binance can censor stuff. So,
but can't their hand also be forced? Like
their hands can be forced, but for 99% of what you use smart contract for today, censorship resistant doesn't matter, right? So like you're not, if I'm just trading NFTs, I'm not that worried about the government coming in to say I can't send this NFT to someone else or something like that, right? So it's not, if I'm paying like 1/100th of the fees to do NFTs on BSC versus Ethereum, I would do it, right?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about NFTs in general? I think I read a tweet thread from you about NFTs. Are you not a large believer in digital scarcity of art or collectibles?
I'm a believer in digital scarcity, but only if there's value, intrinsic value of that thing, right? So, well, not intrinsic value, but if there's value. So, like for artwork NFTs, I'm not a big believer in that. I think it's a fad. The value is in the artwork itself, not the NFT. So the NFT is effectively like a certificate of authenticity. So like some things like where someone took a Banksy artwork, minted an NFT for it, and then like burned the original and try to say the value is now in an NFT. I think that's just kind of very stupid. But for some stuff with NFTs where like if it's like a popular game where they're using NFT to enforce that it's a unique rare item, I think something like that could be very cool. It's valuable because there's value in the game, right? So if you have like whatever Diablo or some other game where like this unique sword, there's only one copy of it and it gives you this much power in the game and it's worth $10,000 because it's really cool collectible and it actually is useful. I can see that being popular. Yeah.
So imagine losing your private key for the one like ultimate god sword. Everyone in the world that plays this game now hates you. It's like I'm sorry, like, my bad.
Yeah, it's still on the blockchain. It's right here, but
yeah. I still have a couple of questions that I want to make sure we get in. One is, how have, I think you and Fluffy Pony in particular have really like threaded the needle on being able to maintain or create, be a central person within an altcoin ecosystem, and also kind of maintain your credibility card amongst like traditional crypto OGs, primarily Bitcoiners, and at least some segment of Bitcoin maxis. Like, how have you managed to do that? And yeah.
Well, it's not like a goal I set out to do. It's not. I'm just being myself, and whatever happens, right? So I don't think it's something that I try to thread the needle to be popular among both Bitcoin and shitcoin people.
But do you have any speculation in terms of like how you've managed to maintain your reputation over the years? Because this is maybe a question for both of y'all, because whatever there's these sayings about, if you're in an ecosystem long enough, you either become like a meme or an enemy or whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's the direct quote from The Dark Knight. Well done. In The Dark Knight, he goes, if you're in a space long enough, you become a meme or an enemy. Yeah. That is the direct quote from The Dark Knight movie.
Yeah. I think what's key is that I'm not like attacking Bitcoin, right? I'm not saying like Litecoin is a better Bitcoin. I'm not like, I think Bitcoin is still king, right? So I'm still supporting Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is still the best cryptocurrency out there. But on the other side, I think Litecoin can help Bitcoin in certain ways, right? With like, for example, with launching Segwit first, with being a valuable testnet, and stuff like what I'm working on with MWeb on Litecoin. I don't think Bitcoin will adopt it. I think it's a bit too controversial for Bitcoin, but it's a good way to kind of try something different and to see how that works on a different network. It's something that Bitcoin, it won't happen on Bitcoin. Like, so it's cool that there's coins like Litecoin where we can try something different and see how that works.
Yeah, I think also because you did a fair launch and like more bought or mined your own coins, I think that helps a lot. I think a lot of the Bitcoin maxi arguments are against things that exploit the space that has gained attention because of Bitcoin, because of Satoshi's creation, in order for personal profit. And there is like a fine line there between like creating something that adds value and acts as like a test net for Bitcoin or whatever, and like using your own capital to buy into stuff versus like turning up in 2020 or 2021 and going, I'm doing an IDO on fucking the 17th Ethereum killer because it's actually a clone of the IDO that was done yesterday on the 16th Ethereum killer, and we haven't changed the code yet, but let's see if it works.
So the quote is, you either die a hero
difference.
or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I think I basically got it right.
Yeah, you're a meme or you're a villain. They should re-edit the movie.
Yeah, they did it wrong.
So
I'd love to
I should die now and be a hero.
Yeah, I'd love to ask, like, what are some things that over sort of the last decade have played out so differently to how you thought they'd play out? Because I remember way back when, the early days of crypto, I wasn't really even cognizant that we were like in a thing that was like super important. And like 10 years, we might look back and go, oh, wow. And after my first year, like, my first year was just novel and like, this is interesting. After that, I started to understand like, all right, this is going to become more of an industry and blah, blah, blah. And I tried to figure out what the long term of that looks like and how I can align myself to, be as successful as possible given the rapid expansion of the space. And there's a bunch of things that I guessed right and like this worked out well for me, and a bunch of things where I just got it totally wrong, which I'll talk about mine on another day maybe. But what I'd love to know, like, which things that just like absolutely came true and you're like, this was obvious from the beginning, and which things were like, I thought this is so different to what I thought would ever happen.
Well, obviously Bitcoin came true, right? So when I first found out about Bitcoin, I kind of knew right away it's going to be huge. I saw it as like a better form of money, better than gold, better than fiat currencies. Back then, like it was at $30 when I first found out about Bitcoin. It dropped to $2 like in 6 months. It dropped like 90% of its value in 6 months. But I still believed in it, right? So I actually thought my target was $5,000. I thought in 10 years, Bitcoin would be $5,000. And when I told people that, they thought it was crazy, right? It was like $2. It was going to go to $5,000 in 10 years. People thought it was crazy. And it actually exceeded my expectation, right? Now, 10 years later, it's at $50,000, $60,000. So that's pretty crazy. Something that I totally didn't expect. I totally didn't expect Litecoin to be as crazy as it is, to be as popular as it is, because I created it just kind of for fun. I launched it just for fun, right? So I didn't expect anything out of it. So that was totally unexpected.
And was it the first altcoin? Because I wasn't there. I joined a little bit afterwards. It wasn't?
It's not. Namecoin, I think, is the first altcoin. First one that actually, it's probably the first one that was actually launched after Bitcoin. And then there were about a dozen or so before Litecoin launched. And the reason why I launched Litecoin is I thought I could do better than the other dozen coins, especially the fairness part. Every coin, Namecoin, I don't think had a pre-mine, but every coin after that had a pre-mine. Like, was it Xcoin, Solid Coin, Tenebrix, IO Coin? There's a lot of these coins that came out that had like a huge pre-mine and just launched to kind of enrich the founders. So I decided I want to do something that kind of has some of the qualities of the other coins, but without the pre-mine. So launch it as fairly as possible. And I think because of that fairness, fair launch, it became more successful than these other coins.
I remember when I used to trade on BTCE before they got governmented. There was a coin on there and it was really controversial, and I didn't know because I was a noob. So I just joined and I saw Peer Coin, Prime Coin, Litecoin, Feathercoin, Bitcoin, and I can't remember what it was called now. I think it began with a V maybe. And there was a coin on there that looked really good because I don't know, maybe it was cheap or it was the cheapest one or the chart looked the best or something. And I bought it, and then the day after I bought it, I found out that they'd like paid BTCE like millions of dollars to be listed on BTCE, and they'd given them like half of the coin supply, and it just went straight to zero or something. That was my introduction.
It's a coin that was pre-mined, and they used that pre-mine to pay people. There were quite a few back then. It was funny because when I launched Litecoin, you can actually check the bitcointalk.org forum posts on the Litecoin launch. One of the first few comments, or many of the first few comments, were saying like, "Why do we need another coin? There's no, like, we already have all these a dozen other coins. Why do we need Litecoin? It's crap."
How times have changed. I'd like to ask about the culture at Coinbase and what it was like to work there. They just went public. The chat wants to know, did you sell the top on Coinbase as well? And then, more importantly, what was it like to work there, and how did it evolve over your tenure culturally?
I'll answer the popular question first. So I did not sell the top on Coinbase because we haven't reached the top yet. I'm still waiting for us to reach the top first before I sell it.
Can you let us know?
Sure, I'll let you know. Actually, the stock price has dropped quite a bit since launch. It's at 250 now, which is crazy. I didn't expect it to drop this much. But I'm holding on to it. I'm waiting for the top. What was the culture like? So I joined Coinbase in 2013, I think. Yeah, in mid 2013. Was it? I forget. it was a while ago. As like the second employee, third employee.
Yeah.
After the founders, second engineer. It was a small team. It was a startup, right? It was it just started. It was doing fairly well. People were hearing about it. It was like the first place where people can buy and sell Bitcoin in the US with their bank account, right? They didn't have to wire money or send money via Dwolla to some bank in Japan or somewhere else to buy Bitcoins. And the reason why I joined Coinbase is because I always thought that for Bitcoin to succeed, people had to be able to easily buy and sell Bitcoin, right? And Coinbase was the first. It was like the way to do it back then, or it was starting to become very useful, very popular. So I wanted to help out in that aspect. So the culture was, it was a great startup. People were very smart, just trying to change the world, right? Doing something. But the one thing about Coinbase is one of the core kind of thing was we want to do it the right way, right? We want to do it like follow all the regulations, get all the licenses that we need, and just do it the right way, right? Without a lot of the shady stuff that's been going on in the space with other exchanges. So, and that has played out well for Coinbase. It's been very successful.
Do you think that they've got like some kind of understanding that there will be regulatory clarity for altcoins? Because to me, it looks like they've entered just like ask for forgiveness later mode, because they're just listing everything, whether it like might be a security or not. Whereas they used to have this framework and this process and all this stuff that they put into practice. And now there's like certainly